Today I'll give you my first impressions of the first ever continuous standalone salinity monitor, the Reef Factory Salinity Guardian, which was given to me for free by Reef Factory, so a big thanks to them. In fact, this was the piece of equipment that got me interested in Reef Factory when it was first announced way back in 2020, and it's been in development that whole time to make sure it's just right. And if it's your first time here and you want a new reefing video every week, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out when I upload. Until now, if you wanted to constantly monitor the salinity in your reef tank, the only options were to buy an Apex or a GHL aquarium controller for around £800. But the Reef Factory range of control and monitoring devices doesn't rely on a central computer, which means you can buy each piece of equipment separately. And if you want to know more about how Reef Factory kit works, I'll link a video in the top corner that tells you more. In the box then you get the salinity probe, a quick start guide, a digital display and temperature probe, some salinity calibration fluid, a bracket to hold the probe, and the power supply. Setup is easy, but there are a few points worth mentioning, chief among which is the placement of the probe. It shouldn't be kept too close to your heaters as temperature affects salinity readings, nor should it be kept with your refugium as your fuse lights will encourage algae growth on the probe. You also shouldn't keep it in the same section as your return pump, as that's where your auto top off will dispense fresh water, which will of course affect the salinity reading. And finally, you need to keep it upstream of your skimmer to avoid micro bubbles attaching to the probe. I've installed this just before my skimmer, which is working fine. The mounting bracket is pretty basic, but far too many reefing companies don't include kit mounts as standard, so I always appreciate it when they do. And crucially, the bracket is adjustable, so you can easily set the probe to the required depth of between 7 and 12 centimeters. It's crucial not to completely submerge the probe, so before you install it, make sure your sump water level doesn't rise too high when you turn the return pumps off. This won't be an issue for 99% of tanks, particularly given you shouldn't keep it in the return pump section of your sump, which is where the water level changes most when your return pumps turn off. When you first set up, you'll need to calibrate the probe. They also recommend you calibrate the temperature probe first, but the only way to do that is to buy a high precision thermometer, and I've personally found the salinity was spot on without bothering with temperature calibration. In fact, the temperature probe on my Salinity Guardian reads within 0.1 degrees C of my Reef Factory thermocontrol probe, which seems to be close enough to give an accurate result. To calibrate the salinity probe, you'll need to warm up a calibration sachet by plonking it in your sump. Then insert both the temperature and salinity probes into the solution. You then wait 60 seconds, press OK on the app, et voila! Calibration will work best at a temperature of 25 degrees C, but mine seems to run just fine at 25.8. And I've found the Salinity Guardian to be pretty accurate. I recalibrated it after 6 weeks and it read 34.8 parts per thousand against my 35 parts per thousand calibration fluid, which is better resolution than I've ever got from a refractometer, and a huge improvement on my HANA salinity checker, which I only ever trust immediately after calibration. Your salinity readings are also permanently displayed on an LCD screen, or you can check in on the Reef Factory app. The app is Wi-Fi and cloud-based, so you can check in on your phone or computer whether you're at home, work, or on a beach in Hawaii. Can't just be me who obsesses about his reef tank when on holiday. The app shows you your current salinity as well as your current temperature, which is a useful feature if you don't have remote temperature monitoring. And it records your historical readings for salinity for the last 12 months. You can set the temperature to read in centigrade or Fahrenheit, and the salt level to read in the usual salinity, i.e. parts per thousand, or specific gravity, e.g. 1.026. It can also be set to display density and conductivity if you're feeling a bit kooky. You can also set high and low alert levels, so the app will tell you if your salinity falls outside of your desired range. If that happens, the app will send you an email, text or push notification so you can take corrective action. Because this is a monitor, not a controller, it can't automatically make adjustments for you. Although doing that would require 2 dosing pumps and 2 containers, one with new salt water if your salinity was too low, and one to drain water from your tank if your salinity was too high. So it's much easier to make any adjustment manually, and I did exactly that by adding a couple of litres of salt water and waiting for evaporation to increase my salinity nice and gently, while also of course checking in on the app to make sure all was well. My salinity was at 34 parts per thousand, and it is now back up closer to 35, which is where I want it. That's how it works then, but do you actually need it? Well, there are two ways of looking at this. One is that salinity is the single most important parameter that governs all other parameters in your tank, and that a peak or trough in salinity can easily wipe out hundreds or even thousands of pounds of your corals. The other way to look at it is that with a simple auto top off and regular water changes, salinity will take care of itself. And before I got this, I'd only test salinity a few times a year, and when I did, it was almost always near enough in the right place, so this is very much a want not need bit of kit. With that said, I always appreciate extra data on my tank, and it's helped me to easily bring my salinity back up to the 35 parts per thousand mark. And there's a whole list of things that can alter your salinity over time, including if you skim wet, if you use 2-part dosing solutions, particularly if you don't do water changes, if you don't test the salinity of your newly mixed water when you do water changes, or if you regularly sell corals, which of course necessitates giving away tank water too. And it can change much more quickly and dangerously if you accidentally knock off your Red Sea ATO valve, or if your ATO runs dry, or even worse, gets stuck in the on position. So how much will this cost you? While it is the cheapest way to continuously monitor salinity, at £299, it is not exactly an impulse purchase. Now the reason it costs that much is because the probes alone are a reassuringly expensive £180. Which isn't cheap, but I've personally found it to be vastly superior to the closest alternative I own, the Hannah Salinity Checker, which costs £80, relies on you testing manually, doesn't have an app, and loses calibration if you so much as look at it funny. At the other end of the spectrum is an £800 aquarium controller, which is a lot more money, but of course provides a lot more additional features, so quite simply you'll need to weigh up what's important for you and where your budget lies. If you've got any questions, then let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for next week, and until next time, happy reefing.